Today we're going to solve problem number 13. If you haven't really used Linux before, I'm not sure if I would consider the problem easy, but you could solve it without any real knowledge or use of Linux too, so it depends on how you look at it. The problem is called Here's Johnny, and it's 100 points, the first one I believe, and it's under the category cryptography. So let's read the problem here. Okay, so we have found some important looking files on a Linux computer. Maybe they can be used to get a password to the process. Connect with the server, and the port number is 38860. And here are the two files that you can look at. And let's take a look at the hints here. And it says, if at first you don't succeed, try again and again and again. And if you're not careful, these kind of problems can really rock you. So rock you here, that is a hint. Alright, let's start. First, I guess we need to copy the link here, our connection to the server. Copy. And just to mention it, if you read up on the two files mentioned and read up on what they tell you, you're actually going to learn a lot about Linux and encryption and much more that's going to help you out in the real world if you're interested in this stuff. We're going to open the shell. And to log in to the shell here, the Pico Shell, we're going to need our regular username and password that we use on the picoCTF. And I'm going to just type clear here so we get a clean terminal. And let's start and see what we can find out. We can use the link from the problem and connect to the server. And here we are. So now the first thing you'd probably try here is your own username and credentials. And I'm not gonna use my real password here because it actually shows in clear text, but you get the point. If you use your own password here, you're just gonna get a failed login, and then you're gonna have to try again. And who else do we know? The only other person we know that's on the system is what we could call the system administrator or root. And you could try that as a username. And then again, the only password you really know so far is your own password. And that's kind of like what they mean with try and try again. You could try also to escalate your privileges here, but it's not really going to help you much. What we could try to do here, just for the fun of it, is what you're going to find out is that the password file, the passwd file, and the shadow file, they exist in a directory called etc, which is the first thing you're going to find out when you Google it. But we can try to grep and our username here and etc and the file, and you see the only thing it tells us here is that this is our username and we have a password. but it doesn't tell you anything else in the password file because that information is stored in the shadow file. And if we try to grep our username in the shadow file here, we are in the Pico system. We are actually going to get a permission denied, and that will also be the same for root. So this is not the path to use. So we're going to go out of this for now and go back and see what we can figure out with the files we have. I'm guessing you've tried all those possibilities already. So what we're going to do is we're going to download these two files to our computer, and we are going to remember this hint here, right? RockUtxt. I'm in my Linux terminal, and let's move over to our downloads folder, and here we have the files, right? Password, I'm going to just call it password. I know it's called passwd, and shadow. Now one way to look at them is to use the command cat, and it just shows the files in the terminal. So cat password, and that's all there is in it. But the good thing to know here is it's for root, right? So root is a password, and I'm sorry, root is the username, but it's root's password that we want. And all it says here, right, is like before, the X means that root has a password, but it just doesn't say it in this file. And you can read all about the password file on the internet. It's interesting to know. But right now we are going to go in on we're going to clear first here, and we're going to go in on the shadow file, cat shadow. Now here is much more information. What we can say to begin with here is that of course root is still the username, right? And also you can read all about this on the internet. 6 is the algorithm used to create the password. What it means is actually that we use the word testing as a password now, right? And testing, you will never be able to find the word testing as a password on your computer. What it means is that the word you type in will be hashed into something else, and that will be the password that your computer knows. So if I type in testing, it's going to check the computer through the hash, and it's going to find the hash that means testing. You will never be able to kind of like reverse that, but that's the way it's done. And to complicate things even more here is that the 6 here, if it said 1, it would be MD5, which is a hash or algorithm, and 6 here is for SHA-512, and then you have here is what you could call a salt. So the password is salted. What that means is kind of like this is a random generated piece of data which is combined to your password, that testing password, and this is the hash that kind of like comes out of it. Now, one thing that a lot of people probably would try, because it's all over the internet, is if you can use this password here to put in, so you could write, for example, root, and then you could use this as a password. But it doesn't kind of like work like that, because if you had put in this, as a password, this would have been salted with something else here to create a new password, so that just wouldn't work. But what we do know here is that we have a hashed password for root, and all we're kind of like left with so far is that we know that it's root that's going to give us a password, but we have that hint, right? RockU. And if you look on the internet here, you are going to see that you're going to see that RockU. We can take a cat on RockU here. RockU is a file full of passwords. It's something that was taken off the internet a long time ago, mostly used in academia and for hackers. This is the free version, which everybody could use, and then you have a paid version, of course, for academia and hackers. But this is a file full of passwords, which means that what the problem actually wants is for you to crack that password, and that's what we are going to do. And to do that, you're going to have to download a program from the internet, and there are probably a few programs that you could use, but John the Ripper is the program I think you should download. It goes for Windows and also Linux, probably also for Macintosh. Might be a little complicated, but I think you could do it. There are some easy ways to also download it, and that's what you're actually going to have to do. All this talk just for the next few minutes, right? We're going to move over to where we have John the Ripper, and look at the Readme file here. Now, it all depends on how you have installed John the Ripper, right? And how you have configured then the environmental variables with paths and everything like that. But this is not a tutorial on how to install John the Ripper. But we need to look at a few things here in this README file. And here it says John password here, right? But this is assuming that the password is a copy of your password file. And in our case, this is shadow, because that's where we have the password. And one thing we're going to need here is this sentence here, which we can just copy. And then we have to remember this, show password, in our case show shadow. That's to retrieve the cracked password. And Q to quit. And let's clear the screen here. And we need to go in the run here. That's how I have configured my system, which means I haven't actually configured it at all. As you can see here, John the Ripper has its own RockUtxt, but we're going to use RockU here first, and we're going to paste in that sentence. And this is word list password list here, right? Because that's where John the Ripper has its list, but our list is a little further away. So we have home and our username, and documents, that was with a capital D. Hack, that was the folder, and RockUtxt, and then it was not password, but it was home username downloads with a capital D, and the file shadow. And let's just push down on enter and see what happens. And it says no password here, right? But it has loaded one password, so it's actually done. And we can write or type John and show, and it said password, right? But we have to go back to our shadow file, which was in downloads and shadow, and this is the password for root, Hello Kitty. That is what we actually need here. And one more thing here, we could actually we have that yeah, we could paste in here and use John the Ripper's password list and see if that actually helps us. Then we don't have to do anything here, right? And if we had the shadow file inside here in this directory, we wouldn't have to use an absolute path to get at it. And that was home username downloads and shadow, and John show, so both the RockUtxt, which picoCTF kind of like gives us a hint, and the password text file with all the passwords that John the Ripper has, both do the job for us. So we don't need John the Ripper anymore. We have Hello Kitty here, and we can go back to picoCTF. We're at the Pico Shell again here, but when I was reading off what John the Ripper stated, and I said one password loaded and then no password, it meant, of course, no password left to crack, right? We have our username, and then our normal credentials to get in. And then we need that link from the problem to connect us to the server with the netcat. Enter, and username is root, and the password here is Hello Kitty. And here we have the flag. So this is actually, it kind of like gives you a nice feeling, right? But what you of course have to remember here is that we were given the shadow file for root, and we're at the same computer, right? We're not externally extracting anything here. And now we can just exit and go back to our problem here. We can paste and we can submit, and we have solved one more problem. And that's it for now. Okay.